Hi guys, I'm GTDae, the Average Show Gamer, and welcome back to my Week in Review series. Today I'm revealing the name I chose for the series. Up to now I've just called it the Week in Review, which is a bit lame. That is fine though, because I'm by nature a little bit lame. That said, as of this week the series will be called Wire, capital W-I-R, lowercase e. Now the more clever of you will see that I live up to my lameness, because Wire is just an abbreviation of Week in Review. So the reason I chose it is just because I like the way it looks in text. Last week, after the RTV with Chris Roberts, a feature survey for the 3.2 patch was revealed on the RSI website. If you haven't completed this survey, please consider doing so, as that will show CIG exactly which features we as the backers value most. I'm working on a video about my choices and why I thought they were important, so keep an eye on the channel for that. Now let's get into the Star Citizen news. This last week was extremely busy on the Star Citizen front, and therefore there is a lot to cover. Let's have a quick look at the bits and pieces I found most interesting. There were multiple iterations on the 3.1 PTU with various levels of success, but CIG did a great job of getting through the PTUs and releasing the 3.1 PU on Saturday, March 31st. I was very happy to see CIG was able to release 3.1 on time as they planned. 3.1's focus was performance optimization, and this goal was for the most part successful. There are still some crashes and bugs that was not quite sorted out, but frame rates are more consistently better as opposed to 3.0.1. For 3.1, CIG added a few ships and vehicles to the PU. You can now fly your Anvil Terrapin, Aegis Reclaimer, Misc Razor, Nox Kue, and the Tumbril Cyclone. I really like the Terrapin. It is a really nice looking ship with a tough stance and design. The Razor is fast and looks like an F1 racer, and is surprisingly tough to kill due to its tiny footprint. The Nox Kue looks great, but with lower FPS it's really hard to control the gravless bikes. But with the performance optimizations in 3.1, you will have more opportunity to use them successfully. Arguably the most exciting addition to 3.1 is the massive Aegis Reclaimer. It's the biggest ship in the game currently, with a gritty and industrial look, and it is simply put a massive and imposing silhouette. Last but not least is the Tumbril Cyclone, the speedy land buggy that is an absolute blast to drive. In the coming week I will make a video on each of these ships, in which I will highlight some of the features and a little bit of the background of the ships. Probably one of the best features in the game is the character customizer. It is a very early implementation for making your character a little more unique. You have the option to change your face, your skin tone, your hairstyle, hair color, and eye color. The options are very limited, but still some variation in the game is really welcome. Another important addition is the service beacons. Players now have the ability to ask for assistance by creating a service beacon. You can ask for combat assistance or transport. When you ask for combat assistance, you set a price per minute of time spent in combat. When you set the transport contract, the player will pick you up and take you to the destination with a set price. When you arrive at the destination, the contract is automatically completed and payment is transferred. I think this is fantastic, as it gives you at least a little bit extra content in the game, as well as a form of cooperative gameplay. I have had very little time in the 3.1 PTU, as it took ages to download, but from the first minute I had a smile on my face. However, there is one thing that I have to address that upset me a little bit. As of 3.1, you will have to pay to expedite your insurance claim on a lost ship. This is well and good, and will force you to be a little less gung-ho in the game. Now losing your ship will actually cost you something, and in some cases quite close to an arm and a leg. First thing I did when I got into the 3.1 PU was to spawn the Reclaimer to get it on the ground on Daymar. Just as I entered the Daymar atmosphere, my game crashed. When I relaunched the game, the Reclaimer's location was unknown, so I had to do an insurance claim, and I was shocked to see it cost 4,900 AUC to expedite or wait 8 hours. I didn't crash the ship, it wasn't blown up by pirates, and I lost it through no fault of my own. Why should I spend 4,900 of my 5,000 starting AUC or wait 8 hours? This early in the development, it seems a little bit pointless to test this. I think this is one feature that they can heavily tone down. I seriously don't believe it necessary to have this mechanic in the game yet. It might have softened the blow if they gave us our starting money that we have. Losing 4,900 AUC out of 21,000 is still a big chunk, but not nearly as devastating. But that's my little rant done for now. Let's quickly go through the weekly Star Citizen shows starting with last week's Calling All Devs. Bigger is better when it comes to equipment and modules. The example given was that a bigger radar will have a longer range, but the trade-off is more power drain and a more noticeable emission footprint. Capital ships will have large radar banks with multiple slots for radars. This is a really interesting bit of information because it gives you an extra layer of stealth gameplay for larger ships. Instead of just limiting the power, you can remove a few extra modules to limit your signature and power draw, something that might save your skin in larger ships if a power plant takes damage in a fight. Ships like the Endeavour with multiple applications will not get new modules or applications for now. That doesn't mean they won't iterate further in the future, but there is no plans for more modules and variants right now. There is also no plans for further work on player-facing modularity in 2018. I would like to go into more depth on this question because I want more clarity on modular ships. I've recently melted my Caterpillar because there is so little information on what type of modules there will be and how they will work. I really hope they talk some more about this in the near future because I really love the idea of the Caterpillar, but it is really just a boring old cargo hauler in its current form, which is sad. At the moment, CIG is working on a short-range tractor beam specifically designed for mining. This tractor beam will be the first implementation of that kind in the game. For the time being, it is intended for the exclusive application in mining. You won't be able to use it to move cargo or ships or to push other players around, although they are investigating such applications to limit the abuse of tractor beams. With a large mining ship like the Orion, tractor beams will be used to catch large chunks of materials before they can float away. Larger tractor beams will be able to move larger objects and have longer ranges at the cost of substantial power drain and the risk of burning out or burning other parts of your ship. CIG is also thinking of allowing players to mount tractor beams on weapon slots or in the place of turrets, making ships more versatile. This is something they are thinking about, with the normal caveat that it might not be applied as such in the game. Tractor beams are a mechanic I am very interested in because the type of ships that I have invested in are supposed to have tractor beams in the game, for example the Cutlass Black and the Caterpillar, so I will be keeping an eye on the work they are doing on this. CIG is thinking of allowing players to have the ability to build their own space stations, but that is for the distant future. The idea is that it will be limited to small science stations or extraction stations far out on the edge of the galaxy. Personally, I prefer a little station in the far reaches of space to a plot of land on a planet or moon. For that reason, I hope this idea will be worked on sooner rather than later. At the moment, there are no plans to have a ship roadmap diagram on the RSI website because it's their prerogative to have that in the ship shape video format. The Turbulent team has a lot to work on this year, including the integration of Spectrum chat into the game, the Voyager direct melting, and a revamp of the pledge store, and so on. These are all things that have a higher priority, and rightfully so. It will be really nice to have, but I don't think it's really that important either. Again, this week we had some really cool questions with some really interesting answers. I really enjoy it when we hear from guys like Dan Truffin and John Crew. They are two of my favorite devs working on the project. So next, let's move on to Around the Verse. This week was a project update on Squadron 42, so let's see what the team was up to in March. The Bengal carrier is getting its interior spaces fleshed out, with detail being added to the crew quarters, the bridge, and the hangars throughout the ship. The Bengal is such a large ship that they had to add a monorail train to take players from one end of the hangar to the other. This will make it easier to get to specific places in the ship or just moving around cargo. Another similar transport system was put into the Shuban Archon mining station. It resembles the London Underground or other subway train systems, only with spectacular views of space. I wonder if you will see the G-Man hang around. Turrets of the Vanduul capital ships are being worked on and will have an organic aesthetic. When the turrets open, they will look like a flower blooming from the hull of the ship. This falls in line with the design aesthetic of all the Vanduul ships. These turrets will make up some part of the Squadron 42 missions and will have to stand out and be a fun part of the game. Meanwhile, the VFX team are working on the flashes and explosions made by the Vanduul weapons. I'm imagining missions where we fly our gladiators blowing up turrets from close range, like in the opening sequence of The Last Jedi. The VFX team has also been working on how laser weapons look and feel when it's fired. The focus was to make it look and feel more powerful for a player in the cockpit. This is something that would make the dogfighting experience a little more intense, and I like what I see here. Next, they showed a bunch of takedown animations. These are motion capture animations and are methods of creeping up on our opponents and taking them out stealthily. These were some slick hand-to-hand combat moves that will be awesome to see not only in Squadron 42 but also in Star Marine. Lastly, there was some rework of the skin shaders on the characters of Squadron 42. The example shown was nothing short of spectacular. One thing I noticed is that they reduced the shine on the skin of the characters. In the holiday livestream, the characters looked sweaty all the time because of the shiny texture they used, and was not all that visually appealing. These changes makes the characters look a lot more believable. The beards and hair also had a major step up and looks great. There was clearly a lot of time spent on refining these textures. The rest of ATV was spent on flight AI. A lot of the storytelling of the game is going to be done through the gameplay, and a large part of that is a believable AI system. Designers should be able to tweak NPCs to play like battle-hardened pilots, while others make mistakes like a rookie. The big difference between the new Subsumption AI system and the old AI system is that Subsumption is character-centric. So the ship's behavior is not dependent on the ship, but on the characteristics assigned to the NPC pilot. NPC pilot characteristics will also depend upon what type of role they fulfill. So a pilot flying a fighter will behave differently to a pilot flying a salvage ship, and should be discernible in how the ship is piloted. AI pilots will have control over all the systems of the ship, and will be able to change shields, weapon power output, and use countermeasures. The AI pilot will also try to get into superior positions in order to win a dogfight. It will also try to avoid collisions with objects in space. AI will have their own personality, and that will drive how they approach the situation. As an example, the Vandal will aggressively attack and use their ships to damage their opponents, so you can expect them to use ramming tactics in battle. Pirates might not want to do excessive damage to your ship because they might want to salvage your ship after the fight. Outside factors can also have an impact on the AI's ability. Factors like fatigue, hunger, and morale. When an AI NPC is created, it will be given a set of skills that affect the piloting ability and a set of traits that define their personality. Skills are things like weapon proficiency, piloting ability, and so on. Traits have more to do with the personality, and some pilots may be hot-headed where others may be more reserved. There is also a morale system, and depending on an outcome of a fight, an AI can have different reactions. If a whole squad is killed except for one pilot, the AI might run away or become more defensive. Sustenance and general hygiene can also play a role in the morale of the AI. Storytelling triggers can also affect the behaviors of AI, so a pilot can be scripted to do a specific thing based on what is supposed to happen in the story. There is also a nemesis system where if an AI pilot survives a fight, he might return in the next mission. But this time he might be more persistent and aggressive because he might want to take revenge. In the future, all these AI applications will be implemented into the PU and Arena Commander as well. Reverse this week was on concept design, so there was very little new news. But as always, it was well worth the watch as it gave us an insight on how CRG goes about creating characters and ships. So that's it for this week's Star Citizen programming. This week it will hopefully be a bit slower and I can get through the backlog of videos I still want to do. For instance, the videos on the new flyable ships in 3.1, my video on the 3.2 feature survey, and some more gameplay videos. So keep an eye on the channel during the week for these videos. Thank you for watching the 4th episode of the Wire series, and I hope there was some content that you enjoyed. If you did like it, give it the thumbs up below and a thumbs down if you didn't. Comment below on what you liked and what you disliked, and I will make an effort to improve. In the video description you'll find links to all the content I've covered today. While you're down there, check out my other social media links and follow me there for more content. I would also massively appreciate it if you would support me on Patreon, and thanks to those of you already doing so, you are absolute heroes. Another way of supporting me is by visiting my merch store at designedbyhumans.com/shop/GTDae. I'm GTDae, the Average Joe Gamer, and once again, thanks for watching, stay awesome, and I will see you in the next one.